What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope things are going well on this Wednesday. And I thought we'd take another video here to look deeper into the Klint Kubiak offense and try to get a feel for what we can expect from Klint Kubiak now that he's here in Seattle. I've done a little bit of this. I talked about this a little bit in a previous video, but I figured it would probably be a pretty good idea to do the basically the same video for a bigger sample size. And Brady Henderson has done the heavy lifting here. Shout out to him. He posted this tweet a couple of days ago. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the data that he compiled, which is more expansive than what I was talking about a few days ago when talking about Kubiak. Once again, I want to remind everybody I'm streaming on the Bleacher Report tonight. Please download the app if you haven't already. Make an account. Get ready for that. Again, a decent chunk of my meaningful content this year will be there, including immediate post-game streams. So if you're not over there, there's just no way to watch it. So make that account and keep an eye. The community tab will already have the link to the show. So go over to the community tab, and you should be able to find it posted earlier today, a link to the Bleacher Report show. Okay, so this is a nice little chart that Brady Henderson put together using data from True Media on play calling and play design tendencies from Klint Kubiak during his 3 stints as a play caller so far. We've talked about this a little bit, but he was the play caller for the whole season in Minnesota in 21. He was the play caller for 6 games in Denver in 22. And then he was the play caller for the full season last year in New Orleans. So let's take a look at this data a little bit. Let's keep in mind, for a good chunk of this, he has not really had much to work with at the quarterback spot. Last year in particular, yes, he got 10 games out of Derek Carr, but then he also had to deal with a pretty good amount of Spencer Rattler and a little bit of Jake Haener. And he did get Russell Wilson in 2022, but it was the worst version of Russell Wilson. And we all remember what happened in 2022 with Russell Wilson. It was about as bad as he could ever play. So really the only truly good quarterback he's ever had to work with would be Kirk Cousins in 2021. I don't consider Derek Carr to be a particularly good quarterback. He's okay, but really that's the only time he's had a notably good quarterback as a play caller. But let's take a look at some of these tendencies so we can get an idea of what he might prefer. Keeping in mind that some of this stuff is going to be influenced a little bit by situation, but it's a bigger sample size. When I did this, only looked at a little bit of it. And I still think that's valuable because looking at his play calling tendencies in games where the Saints are getting killed or games where the Saints have an incompetent quarterback, and I'm not talking incompetent in the Jameis Winston manner. I'm talking incompetent as in the rookie Spencer Rattler manner where he's just not ready. I don't know how much you can learn from that, but let's focus in on some stuff here. So shotgun percentage, and this is something that I found to be very interesting and compelling from Kubiak so far. You can see that he is one of the least he uses shotgun less than almost any other play caller. The 2021 Minnesota Vikings used shotgun on 45% of their snaps, which was almost the least amount in the entire league, 31st. And the Saints, even though the Saints were bad, even though the Saints were behind a lot, were in shotgun only 57% of the time, which was 29th. So this guy does not like lining up in shotgun very much. He'll do it. He did it, I think, a little bit more. He did it a little bit more when the Saints were able to play a real quarterback. Like, he probably reduced this a lot when he had Rattler out there. But still, this is not a big shotgun heavy guy. The one time in his career he used a lot of shotgun, it was only an average rate, and it was with Denver. And remember, Denver that year had Russell Wilson at quarterback. You're going to want to use more shotgun with a shorter quarterback. And Denver that year was always behind. They were a terrible team. So he was in shotgun a lot partially because they were always behind and they needed to come back. And when you're trying to come back, you're going to line up in shotgun more most of the time. So other than situations where he's seemingly forced to get into shotgun, he's really not a fan. And when I think about the Seahawks last year, I think one of their big problems offensively was they were in shotgun way too much. So this, I think, on the surface is encouraging. I think getting under center is probably a good thing. I think getting into formations where you can be a little bit more balanced and run the ball more effectively is probably a good thing. So this is something that stands out to me because I think it's something that we need to get better at and something that we need to embrace a little bit more. Also, this is an interesting one. We're probably going to have extended conversations about this. 3 or more receiver sets. In 2021, he was near the bottom of the league in 3 receiver sets, didn't do it a lot. In New Orleans last year, he was near the bottom of the league, did it even less. The only year he did an even close to average rate of 3+ receiver sets was Denver. And again, Denver was a team that was playing from behind a lot, so they were kind of obligated to do it. And I know the Saints were behind a lot as well, but this is probably reduced a little bit by the fact that they had such bad quarterback play. He felt obligated to not do the 3 receiver sets because he wanted to present at least the illusion of balance. And even in games where he was behind, wanted to make sure that he wasn't putting too much on guys like Rattler and Hayner. So he doesn't really like 3 receiver sets. So that means a couple of things. First, maybe we don't have an urgent need to add another receiver, right? Now, the difficulty is, let's say we keep DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf outside receiver, JSN slot receiver. How are you going to make that work? Because in theory, in order to have JSN on the field, you need to have 3 receivers. But it doesn't seem like Klint Kubiak likes 3 receivers that much. Now, on the one hand, that would sure make it easier for us to not have to go out of our way to get a blue chip receiver this offseason. But how are you going to get JSN on the field as a slot receiver when you don't have 3 or more receivers on the field? So that's interesting because JSN is one of the most exciting things about this offense going into 2025. That is something that we as Seahawks fans are almost unanimous in our excitement about. So I wonder how that's going to work. And what that also means is that Kubiak likes 2 tight end sets a lot. He loves 2 tight end. So therefore, if he continues to love that, you're going to need to add a legitimate tight end 1 because AJ Barner, he may have a nice year in 2025, but I don't think he's going to turn into some elite tight end, not yet anyway. So you're probably going to need to add another really good tight end out there, like a guy like a Tyler Warren or at least a Harold Fannin Jr., somebody who's really good. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. There are some things about this that I like, but the current roster is not built great for somebody who really doesn't like 3 receiver sets because JSN is a slot guy. Motion percentage, this one's kind of interesting. So one thing about Ryan Grubb's process that I appreciated was he loved pre-snap motion. And we can see that from the data we have so far, Kubiak is about average at motion. He was 17th in Minnesota, 15th in New Orleans. The one year he didn't use a lot of motion was in Denver, which was only 6 games. And also, maybe this indicates something about Russell Wilson. Maybe using pre-snap motion with Russell Wilson. I mean, we didn't do it a lot when he was here. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe this is just representative of the fact that you had to work with Russell Wilson. I don't know. But otherwise, he was about average. I can live with that. I'd like to see a little bit more. I'm a big fan of pre-snap motion. I think that was one of the things that Ryan Grubb got right in 2024. But to me, this is something that could easily be tilted a little bit to where he's top 10. If he increases his motion rate just a little bit. By the way, there was a big increase from 2021 to 2024. He went from, 45% to 57%. But the league also shifted. So he is shifting. It's just the league shifts with him. Rush percentage, he likes to run the ball. He was 11th and 14th in rush percentage for the Vikings and the Saints. And remember, both those teams were below average to bad. Now, the rush rate in New Orleans is probably a little bit high because he had such bad quarterbacks. He wanted to still run the ball a lot even when he was behind. But regardless, this is a guy who likes his balance. The one place where he was a little bit imbalanced was Denver. He wasn't that imbalanced. And remember, it was Denver. Denver was playing from behind a decent amount, and they had to throw the ball a lot because running the ball, I mean, they paid Russell Wilson $250 million. They weren't going to do that and then run the ball into the dust when they were behind, right? This next one, though, is very interesting. Outside the tackle runs, outside tackle percentage. Minnesota did it at a slightly above average rate, 24%. Denver did it at about an average rate, just over 22%. Last year for the Saints, loved outside tackle runs, 32.4%, third. This is why I say, you people who want to trade Ken Walker, you guys are crazy. Klint Kubiak loves to run the ball the way Ken Walker loves to run the ball. This is the formula that can get Ken Walker to a point where he is one of the better running backs in the league. 32.4% outside the tackle running. Ken Walker could benefit tremendously from an offensive system like this. So, to those out there who want to trade Ken Walker, like, you got to see him in this offense before you move off of Ken Walker, I think. It's not like you're going to get that much anyway. So, this should excite you as a fan of a team that has Ken Walker employed. So, here's one thing that surprises me a little bit, because last year, when the first 5 weeks of the season for the Saints had an above average play action rate. I looked that up. And if you take a look at the play action rate overall, you'll see that he uses play action very little. 23rd, 28th, 24th. Percentage is a little over 20%. So this is something that people might not like. But let's understand one thing about this data set before we judge too harshly. His last 2 stints as a play caller were in situations where his teams spent most of their games playing from behind. Denver, of course, and New Orleans. Both those teams were very bad. Both those teams played from behind a lot. So you're not going to get to play action very much when you're playing from behind and the other team knows you're going to pass anyway. It's not that effective. If you're behind by 17 points in the late third or early fourth, nobody's falling for play action. And if you are going to run the ball, they don't care. They're like, cool, run the ball. Drain that clock. We'll let you have the run all day long. Nobody's falling for that. So usually speaking, teams do not do play action in must-pass situations. And generally speaking, Kubiak's offenses found themselves in much-pass situations because the teams were not very good. Minnesota, though, that is interesting. Now, his play action rate was a little bit higher, 23.5%. 23rd is not terrible. But I do wonder if maybe he starts doing more play action this year, assuming the team is good. Remember, the 2021 Vikings, they weren't a terrible team. They weren't even really bad, but they certainly weren't good. So maybe if he actually has a good team that can play competitively in games constantly, he can start doing more play action. But this is something that Seahawks fans are going to want to see more of. They're going to want to see more play action, and they're going to want to see it used effectively. So this is something that needs to go the other way. And also one interesting note that Henderson threw into this data set, outside pocket percentage. This is throws where the quarterback goes outside the pocket and then throws the ball. Basically did not happen at all in Minnesota. 10.9, basically 11% near the bottom of the league. But these last 2 stints as a play caller, Denver and New Orleans, he is third in outside pocket throws. He likes to get his quarterbacks on the move and likes to let them make kind of scheduled, easier half the field throws. And that fits, I think, fairly well with Geno Smith. Geno Smith does pretty good throwing on the run. Geno Smith has the mobility to move around outside the pocket. So third, that indicates that there might be a little bit of a skill set overlap here that is appealing. So I like this as well. And that's what Brady Henderson had. I think that's the best I can evaluate it for the moment. There is some stuff to ponder. Play action and 3 receiver sets mostly. But for the most part, I think there's a lot to like here. And there's a lot that's going to be addressed by getting a guy like this in the building after a year of Ryan Grubb. But let me know what you guys think. Bleacher Report stream starts in about 2.5, 3 hours. So get ready over there. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Everyone have a good day. Let me know how you feel.